So this semester we conducted a replication project where we were looking at the effect of mindfulness on one's ability to resist sunk costs. And as part of that, we looked at whether or not people were able to resist the effect of a sunk cost when making a decision, hypothetically, about what a business should do. Here I've just pulled out the sunk cost responses, or the investment responses from our participants, and whether or not the sunk cost was involved. So participants were asked whether or not they would pay $10,000 as part of their business to buy a new printing press, or in another scenario, would they invest $1 million to develop a radar or a plane that's invisible to radar. We manipulated whether or not people had already invested in a printing press or invested in developing a plane. So I've pulled out just those responses. We've got 4 variables. Press investment, which represents whether or not people have invested. So if not, then they have low investment. And if they have invested, then they have high investment. So if they've already bought a new printing press or spent money on another option. And for the plane, we have also manipulated whether they have low or high previous investment. So under a low, this is a scenario where they have not already invested any money in developing the plane. And in high investment, this is where they've invested a large amount of money already before they consider investing a further $1 million. Then we measured whether or not people were able to resist the sunk cost. So would they be able to, for the printing press, they're given the option to buy a new printing press for $10,000 from a company that's going out of business, which is superior to the press they have now. If they have, so we code this as resist if they go ahead and buy that printing press because it's a good deal. If they say they won't, then we're going to say that they've succumbed to the sunk cost, especially for the high investment version. So typically what you would expect to see is that under low investment, people will be more likely to say that they are willing to spend $10,000 to buy the new printing press. And if they have a previous investment, if they've already spent a lot of money on a new printing press, then typically they succumb and do not buy the new printing press for $10,000. So same for the plane here. If you've already invested a lot of money in developing a plane, you're more likely to be willing to invest another $1 million in developing that plane, even in a scenario where you find that a competitor is on track to build a new plane that outperforms the one that you're developing. So what we're curious about then is there an effect of investment on how many people choose to buy the printing press, or how many people choose to invest $1 million in their developing a new plane. So to test that, we need to look at whether or not the frequency of resisting and succumbing responses is different depending on whether people have a previous investment or not. To do that, the best test to use is going to be the Pearson's chi-square, or the chi-squared test of independence. In SPSS, the easiest way to run this test for our class is going to be go to Analyze, go to Descriptive Statistics, and go to Crosstabs. Then you need to put the variables that you're going to use, or that you're going to test. In this scenario, I would suggest using, so if we want to focus on the printing press, then we're going to put printing press in the rows of our crosstabs, and we'll put their resistance for their responses to whether they would invest or not or buy the press in the columns. If you just run this, it'll just create the table that shows you how many people resisted and succumbed in each condition under high and low investment. To run the chi-squared test, you need to go to Statistics. You can select a number of options. At this point, I'm just going to ask you to select chi-squared, and you can also get phi and Kramer's V for measures of effect size. Often it's helpful to see the percentage breakdown, so how many people, or what percentage of people in each condition fell, say, into the resisting or succumbing to sunk costs. So in that case, if you hit cells, then you can ask for the percentage of cases that fall, say, in each category along each row. In this case, I think that's probably the best option. You can also ask for column or total, and depending on how you've arranged your study, those may be better or more relevant, but that's easy to change if you need a different percentage. So in this case, I'm just going to ask for the row. And at that point, then you're done. Just hit OK. And then for the output that SPSS generates, the first table simply tells you how many cases are being used. So we didn't have any missing cases, so all 44 individuals that were tested are included. The crosstab table shows you that for people who were presented with the low investment version, we had 26 individuals. Of those, 17 resisted and 9 succumbed, so 65% resisted and 34% succumbed. When we switch to high investment, we see a shift in the direction that we expect. So of the 18 individuals, we see only 8 resisted, so fewer, than in the low investment condition. And the question we want to know is this significant? Do you see significantly more people succumbing in the high investment condition than the low investment condition? To test that, look at your chi-squared value. So the Pearson's chi-squared value here is 1.901 with 1 degree of freedom, which is not significant. So the probability that you could see a difference this large, simply based on chance, you'd expect about 16.8% of the time, if the null hypothesis were true and there really was no effect of investment. So this does not replicate what we would expect to see. Normally we would expect that switching to the high investment frame would shift people significantly over to succumbing. Also, if you need a measure of effect size, you have both both phi and Kramer's V that you can report in your in your report. So if we want to then switch over and look at our second scenario, so the plane, if you go back to crosstabs, you can remove the printing press and then put the plane investment and plane resist over. Shouldn't need to change anything. All the options should be the same. Phi, Kramer's V, and chi-square are selected, and percentages for the row are selected. So if you run this, now it's testing our second scenario. Here we see a stronger shift. So under the low investment frame of 18 individuals who were presented with that frame, 16 resisted and only 2 succumbed, so almost 90%. But when we shift to the high investment frame, so this is the scenario where people have already invested, I think in this case like $9 or $10 million in developing a plane, they're much more likely to say they'll continue to invest another $1 million in developing a plane. So you drop from almost, 89% resisting down to about 35%. If you look at the chi-squared value for this scenario, it's very strong, 12.8 approximately, with 1 degree of freedom, and the probability is less than 0.001. So again, you've got your measures of effect size below, phi and Kramer's V, and so overall it looks like there was a significant effect of framing for the plane scenario, but that in this case there was no significant effect of the framing or previous investment for the printing press.